So we're going to finish today with a little extension of what we were doing last week. So last week we were working on JavaScript. Okay. So today I want to introduce, and we'll probably just introduce it today. We'll talk about it more next week. Is I just want to introduce jQuery. Okay. So jQuery. Let's see. Is this where we had our sample? jQuery is a JavaScript library. Okay, that makes some of the things we do in JavaScript a little bit easier, essentially. Okay. So let me just call up my notes here. Actually, where do I have them up already? So the first thing we need to do in order to use jQuery is we need to include it in our index file. Okay, so there are a couple of ways to do that. So we can go to the jQuery website. So remember, we can always find documentation to help us out on the web. Okay, so there are two ways to get using jQuery. Okay, one is we can actually download it and then include the files in our project, just like our CSS file or any other JavaScript file. We can have it right in our folder. That's one way. So we can just go to jQuery.com and then download the jQuery file. Okay. Download this. So there are a couple. There's an uncompressed version and a compressed version that's unreadable, but it loads a little bit faster. So those are two ways. So we can download the file and then link it in, just like we've been linking in other files. Okay. The other way, which is I think it's the way I would recommend, is we can link to what's called the CDN. Okay. So if we Google jQuery CDN, so what that'll do is that means we host the jQuery JavaScript file on their servers, and we just create a link to it. So we can do this. Okay, so we can just drag and drop this link into our index file, and we have jQuery. Okay, so let's do that. What we're going to do is we're going to copy this link, and we'll paste this into the head of our document. So let's go back to our example from last week, and we'll go to our index file. And here in our, we'll put this script file right here at the top of our index file. Okay. So what that means, that's essentially we've installed jQuery now. Okay. So let me just get my notes here. Okay, so let's try it. Let's load up our page and see if we have any errors or any other bad things. Okay, so our web page loaded, and let's just check our console. And okay, no errors, so we should be good to go. Okay, so we've loaded up jQuery with the CDN. Okay, so the way jQuery works, let's go back to our trusty Word document. Okay, jQuery. Okay, so jQuery is it's a JavaScript library, so it is just more JavaScript. It's not anything different than JavaScript. Okay, so it makes JavaScript syntax a little bit easier to write and read. Okay, allows us easy access to a lot of the stuff, to a lot of JavaScript functionality. Okay. Okay. So jQuery kind of works. There's two sides to jQuery. Okay, there is, on one half we have a selector. Okay, and then on the other half we have what we're doing to the selector. Okay. So by selector, what we're selecting are HTML elements. So remember when last week when we looked at, let's look here, when we, in our JavaScript, let's look at our JavaScript code. Remember last week we used the get element by ID, and then we gave it an ID. That is, so what jQuery does is it's a shortcut for these calls. Okay, so rather than say document.getElementById, there is a shortcut, that jQuery syntax that we're going to use. Okay, so that's all we're doing. We're just selecting HTML elements, and then we're doing things to those elements. Okay, so the main sort of symbol that we use in jQuery is the $sign. So usually when you see the $sign, we're probably using jQuery. Okay, so the way the selector works is we say $sign and then brackets and then quotes, and then inside we give it a selector. So jQuery works on the same types of selectors that CSS works on, essentially. So how are some of the ways we can select elements in our HTML using CSS? How are some of the ways? How can we reference those elements in CSS? Right? We can reference it by the element. So in CSS we could say P. I want all the P tags to have this syntax, this style. Okay? Or so we can select at the element level. We can select on IDs, right? How do we do that in CSS? How do we select IDs? Hash, right? The number sign. And what else can we select on in CSS? Classes. How do we do that? Dot. Exactly. So we can do the same thing in jQuery. So we could say P. Okay? So that means we're selecting all P tags. Okay? And then on the other side of the P we'll have the dot, and then the other side is something we do to P. Okay? So we might be changing its style, we might be animating it, we might be doing something. Okay? So on the left side of this of jQuery, we have this is our selector. Okay? And we can select a number of different ways. And we'll take a look at a couple of examples. Well, this wouldn't work. So for example, one thing you might want to do is p.hide. And that will hide all p tags. Okay? All p tags. Another thing is maybe we want to hide only things with ID called hide me. So in the quotes we would put $sign hide me, and that will hide all of the things with ID hide me. We might want to hide based on class, a class called hide me, so we use the dot. Okay? Okay. So for example, let's go back to our JavaScript code. And so one thing we're going to do is, so some of you last week may have had errors when your JavaScript code was trying to access elements that don't really exist, that don't exist yet, because they haven't been loaded in the document yet. So what we're going to do is the first thing we're going to learn how to do is we're going to do the ready function using jQuery. Okay? So what we can do is so there's a short way and a long way. So the long way we would say $sign, and then in brackets we would put document, and then .ready, and then we would give it a anonymous function. So we would say function, okay, and we'd close that off, and then inside here, okay, we would say the DOM is ready. So this code here will not run until the entire document has been loaded. So let's try it. DOM is ready. Okay, so let's try the short form now. Let's comment this out, and we'll just do the short form, which is $function, and then in here we'll say alert, the DOM is ready. Okay? Whoops. There we go. Okay? So, that means, so now we can safely run things in this function knowing that everything has been loaded. We won't have the element doesn't exist or undefined error. Okay? So, that's the ready function. So remember, it's a very important JavaScript function. Okay? So now what we can do is, for example, so remember we wanted to get text, the value for text from one of our text boxes, right? So instead of using JavaScript, let's use jQuery now. So now we'll say var whatever test equals, and let's look back at our form, at our index page. So now we have our form, and so what we're going to do is we're going to give an ID to our username, and we're going to call it username. Okay, and now we're going to go back to our JavaScript, and we're going to say, so var test equals $, brackets, quotes, ID, and what did I call it again? Username. And then we say .val. Okay, and now let's alert test. Okay, so nothing. And oh wait, so I have to do this isn't going to work because there's going to be nothing in there when I load it. But let's try. Let's do something, because we'll need to look at events first. But let's set the value. So what we can do is we could say this. We could say equals default text. Okay, and now let's run it. There we go. Okay, so we've used JavaScript to put the text in there, and jQuery. Okay, how about so now let's do this. Remember before when we had to set the text, we had to use document.getElement by ID, username, inner HTML. Well, now we could do this. We could say $, bracket, bracket, quote, quote. We could say, what did we call the message here? The P, username message. So we'll put that, and we'll say .text, and then we'll say this is a message. Okay. So it's just a little bit easier. The syntax is a little bit cleaner, a little bit easier to read. Okay, a little bit shorter. So let's look at. We looked at event handling a little bit last week, but let's look at it a little bit more now. So so remember, some elements, when you click them or move your mouse over them or do things to them, they raise events. Okay, so when I click a button, here, that is raising an event. Okay, and you can catch those events and then do something with it. Okay, and we can do that with jQuery. We can assign an event handler to an object and then program what happens when that event is triggered. Okay, so let me just find my example here. So let's put an event handler on our button. So remember our button here called submit. Let's give it an ID called submit. Okay, so we can reference it in jQuery. And the other thing we're going to do is we're going to take out this. So now it's not going to do the same thing it did before. So now, did I save it? So save, go back here, refresh. So now we've sort of, it doesn't do the check anymore, it doesn't run that function. But what we're going to do now is we're going to go back into jQuery and we're going to select, right, on the, so the button was button, oh, submit. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to say click. So we're going to assign an event. We're going to tell it what to do when we click on that button. Okay, so we're going to do, we're going to give it an anonymous function. Okay, and then let's see. Do we need? What did I forget here? No. Okay. And so now let's test to see if it works. Okay. So now when we click this button, that anonymous function in our click handler, this thing is run.
Can you put a link in the submit button?
A link? You mean, so what do you mean? So when you click the submit button, it goes somewhere else? Yeah, absolutely.
We are not giving this link to the next page. We're giving it to some other website.
Yeah, you could have it do anything, because it's just, this is just a function, and anything you can do in a function, you can do, right?
Can you just link it to Google?
Sure. So I think the way we would do it is, let's see, in jQuery. Let's see, I'd have to look it up. jQuery, go to another link. Let's see. Yeah. Let's see here. So you could do it in just straight JavaScript. Let's see, can we do it in... okay, they're recommending the pure JavaScript approach. So you can do it in jQuery, but let's just look at the pure JavaScript for a second. So in this case, in here we would just put this, and then here we would say google.com. Okay, so we're selecting the window, the location, and we're replacing it. So let's try it. Oh, is it still submitting the form? Let's see. Oh, yeah. Okay, let's take this away. Oh, yeah. Okay. There we go. Okay, so what was happening is type submit is a specific type of button that already has a behavior embedded. But so what we did is I made this a more generic type button, which doesn't automatically submit the form. So now when we click, it allows us to go to a new page. Okay. Okay. So I want to show you a couple of things because you'll need to use this for your lab. Okay. So we're going a little bit over time today, but I'll give you, maybe next week I'll give you a little bit more time. Oh, and we still have to decide when the midterm is going to be. Okay, let's do that, and I just want to finish it, and then we'll decide when I think the midterm will be. We could probably make it March 1st, but let's come back to that. Okay, so one of the things that jQuery allows you to do is simple animation. Okay, so what we can do is let's in our submit button, what we'll do is, and we can do, it doesn't have to be a button. Like we can, let's say, okay, let's create a div tag called, we'll give it called ID. The ID we'll call it button. Okay, and so in our CSS, let's so height 100 pixels, width 200 pixels, and background color red. Okay, let's see what that looks like. And then we'll put some text in here. So remember, you can make a button, or you can make anything out of anything, essentially. You can make a button out of a div tag, out of anything, because we can redefine the behavior in JavaScript. So we'll say click me here, and let's go back to our web page. Okay, so and let's we'll go back here. Our margin will be 20 pixels. So. And let's do this. Border radius 10 pixels, and we'll make the height a little bit smaller, 80 by 150. Okay. So this is going to be our button, and let's make our padding 30 pixels. Okay. So what we can do is we'll make a button out of that. So let's go back. Let's go to JavaScript, and similarly, we can just copy this essentially, and instead of submit, we're going to have, what did we call it? Button, just button, or click me. Click me. No, button. Actually, that might not. Well, we'll see. That might not, because that might be reserved. But we'll see if that works. Okay, button. Okay, and let's just first we'll have an alert box just to see if it's working. Here we go. Okay, and then we'll go back here. So now instead of working, let's do some stuff. Let's select all H1 tags, and let's fade them out. Fade out. Now let's fade it out over 2,000 milliseconds. Let's see. Whoop. See it go? Bye-bye. Okay, let's okay, instead of all H1, or let's do all paragraphs. Bye-bye. Okay, or how about let's slide up. Is it lowercase? Yep. Okay. So let's do this. Let's so the first thing is let's hide all paragraphs initially right off the bat. So we'll just hide. And then instead of slide up, let's slide down. Okay, no text. There we go. There's some text. Okay. Let's, instead of 2,000, let's make it happen in 500. What else can we do? See, we can jQuery is pretty smart. We can chain the command, so we could say slide down, slide up, and so it will go down and then up again. Okay, for whatever reason you might want to do that. Okay. Okay, so I think that's where I'm going to, we'll go over a little bit more in detail this stuff next week, but I want you to play with this stuff a little bit in this week's lab. So, this is what I want you to do for this week's lab. So for your playing card, I want you to extend it again. So, I want you to use jQuery, okay, so install jQuery into your web page, and then I also want you, I want you to have, I want you to add some interactivity. So I want you to add in a longer description of you, maybe a paragraph that by default is hidden. It starts off hidden so that you can't see it, and you should have a little something, a button or a plus thing or an icon or something that then reveals that text with jQuery. So you can slide it down or slide it up. It would be neat if it toggled. So there is a toggle function. You can let's see. So you could slide toggle, and if you just call slide toggle, so if it's up, it'll slide down. If it's down, it'll slide up. Or if you want to, I don't think there's a fade toggle. If you wanted to do a fade toggle, you might have to do the logic yourself. Oh no, there's a fade toggle as well. Okay. So you could use that function as well. So pretty easy, right? You just have to install jQuery and then add a little button or something to your playing card, and then have that. So have your longer description hidden by default. That's revealed with jQuery when they click that element. Okay. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so let's talk midterm. So I think your midterm is going to be on the 1st. And I know your assignment is due on the 4th, but working on your assignment will be excellent studying for the test, okay? So the midterm test is going to be practical, open book, open internet, okay? The only restriction will be you cannot communicate with a live person, okay? So with your colleagues you cannot communicate. You can't use email, you can't use instant messaging. You could use forums, but you're not allowed to make a new post. So you can use existing conversations other people have had, like in Stack Overflow or other forums, but you may not create a new one. Okay? So you can have your notes. You can have all my notes that are on eCentennial. You'll have Google. You've seen me search on Google, right? You need to know how to do. You need to have good Google foo when you develop. Okay, because there are so many technologies, you'll never be able to stay on top of it all. What the skill that you need to have is how to learn, right? So if you can, quickly Google and look at some examples and then pull from those examples, then you'll be good. Okay. So the test will be on the 1st, and it'll be 3 hours long. We won't have a lab that day, and it'll be fully practical. So the one thing is you won't be able to use your own laptop. You have to use these computers, okay? So that I can monitor your screens. Other than that, there are virtually no other restrictions. So you could Google to your heart's content. You can bring in sample code. You can do all sorts of things. Okay, so it'll be a 3-hour task. You'll basically have to code a small little web interface from scratch on your own. Okay, so you'll have to prove yourself then. Okay, so that'll be on the 1st, and we'll get started right at 9:30, and we'll go for 3 hours, and then that'll be it. You'll be done. Okay. So everybody clear on that? Practical midterm. Okay. So next week we're going to talk more about JavaScript. There's a few things I still want to talk about. JavaScript and jQuery we should look at a little bit more. And so next week we'll probably we'll get into responsive design, which is designing web pages that work for all sorts of screen sizes. And so that'll involve looking more at CSS and JavaScript and jQuery. Okay. So any questions about what we looked at? So what did we look at today? We looked at basic image manipulation, right? We looked at, first we started off with GitHub. We learned how to do that. We learned about basic repositories. We did a quick tutorial, so you should be good with GitHub. Email me for any questions. Also, the GitHub help, and they have a video and stuff that should help you. Then we learned about Photoshop, vector graphics, right? I'm not expecting the world's greatest logo, but you should have the tools now to create something basic, okay? And then we learned about jQuery, okay? And so is everyone clear on what I want you to do for your lab this week? Okay? And everyone was okay with the lab last week? What did I ask you to, to be able to change something with a form. Okay? Okay, great. So I will be around till about 1:20 to help you guys today.